All right, all right. Well, good morning. Welcome. It's good to be back. Uh, Welcome to everyone that is joining us. I know we have some coming on still, so appreciate the compliments on the music, Pete. I picked that specifically for you, so I know you're out there. So hope that got your morning started. So good morning, Mr. Kelly. Welcome. Good to see
Good
you.
morning.
And this morning we are joined by a guest who you see on here. They decided that Kevin and I were very, very difficult to look at, and that we needed some help on the forum this morning. So we are joined by Miss Emily. With Emily, tell us who you're with and where you're from. I want to make sure I get this right. I know you're somewhere in the Indianapolis area. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, that's correct, Matt. My name's Emily Cunningham. My company is Service Plus Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, and we are based out of Indianapolis, Indiana.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I know all of you guys up there in the frozen north are anticipating some very cold weather, so hopefully that is going to be good for business. This morning we want to talk a little bit about just get back into some of um, the PPP stuff that's out there. Emily and her company have had some very specific experiences with that, and how what they're doing. And I think she's going to share a little testimony around that. And then, just talk a little bit about sort of some planning and forecasting and some things to be aware of in 2021, and specifically around, how do we really make sure that we're on track doing the things that we need to be doing so that we can accomplish the things that we want to be accomplishing. And obviously, we are much more aware of what's going on this year than we were at this time last year, and so it's really just continuing to take control of that. So we'll get into some of that. So Kevin, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you for a second, because I know you guys want to talk a little. I know it's near and dear to your heart, and PPP and all of that fun stuff. So I'm going to let you two guys just banter for a little bit, and I'll interject where necessary.
Okay. So we're going to get into the advantages of having the capital. And there's a variety of ways of obviously getting capital. You can get through your bank. You can take loans from different entities. And in this particular case, which is I thought there was only going to be a one and done, was the SBA's PPP programs. And I just want to give a brief update because I really want Matt and Emily to go into the uses and needs of cash, especially when in terms of budgeting and forecasting, and the ability to capitalize on those particular programs. But I want to go through first very quickly and make sure that the people are up to date. You should have already filed for your forgiveness on PPP1. Of the almost 50 that we participated in, I would say a little over half have already received their forgiveness. So in other words, you filed appropriately through your lending institution. Anything that was needed to be corrected or fixed has been, and then you will actually get through ADP is one example for your payroll records, and then you'll actually receive forgiveness from PPP1. Very quickly before we go into the uses and needs of it, the PPP2 is off and running. Portal's open. There are third parties out there that if you don't have a lending institution, you can get processed on a PPP2 loan. We talked about last time if you're going to be authorized to be able to do that, if you're going to qualify for it or not. It's a little bit different. You got to have one quarter that I believe was 20 or 25% off from the year before, and that would go against 20 or 19. Again, we can address those questions individually as needed, but the using a third party, we really don't recommend, because you're going to give highly confidential information to those people. And if you can still go through your local bank, I think that's wise. The last thing I want to just touch on before we get to the real meat of today's seminar is the disaster relief. It has changed considerably, but the only thing that's really changed in it is that they have changed geographically where you qualify for it and where you don't. And it's a very simple $150,000 that you're able to take advantage of at 3% over 10-year amortization. In my book, that's almost free money. But it does depend this time on where your business is located. And so you would need to pursue that. And then the last thing I'll say about it is you do not need a lending institution to qualify for that or to process that. You can simply go directly to the SBA and you can do everything online. But it is a tremendous advantage of picking up capital of $150,000 over a 10-year period of time. It's better to have the cash and have the cash in reserves than it is knocking at your banker's door when you really need it, because that's usually what happens. In my experience is getting cash from your bank is kind of like having an umbrella. They're more than happy to give you an umbrella until you really need it or until it starts to rain, and then they usually come and they collect your umbrella. In other words, it's hard to get the cash when you really need it. So get it when you don't need it, and that's a good example both with the PPP 1 and 2, as well as the disaster relief. There you go, Matt.
So Emily, one of the things that I'm really curious about, and I know that there's a lot of different ways to go about getting it, and we kind of stay away from the procedural stuff because I know sometimes it's a banker and you can go to the SBA website and all that stuff. Here's what I'm really curious about from your perspective, having gone through this, you guys. I mentioned last week that at the end of the day, I think when you look at us as HVAC contractors, we're just serial entrepreneurs, right? We're entrepreneurs at heart. You know, it's a business, it's a passion to us, and there's blind spots in entrepreneurs, and you know, we're really good at fixing air conditioners and selling air conditioners, but there's this idea of running the business, and there's a lot of pride I think that comes into those conversations. And when we talk about money, and I mentioned this last week, money is very conceptual. There's a lot of scripting that goes behind money, how we were raised around money. Is it private? Is it, it's if we don't want to borrow. There's all of those things that go into this money concept, if you will. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys arrived at deciding we really need to do this. It's not a pride thing, I think, number one. And then, what did it let you guys do? What did it really allow you guys to do from the perspective of running your company, through 2020, but then also as we get into this year, now kind of knowing what's in front of us. I'm real curious of that perspective from you guys' point of view.
Yeah. So the PPP came out in April of 2020, which was about a month after we really started to feel the impacts of COVID here in the States. And during that month, I was really scared. Fear governed my decision making. And I was worried that our customers weren't going to let us in their homes. I was worried that, oh my gosh, what if by some fluke we're not considered essential workers, things like this. And so I was really worried about our ability to maintain our operations and the work that we do in the community and serve the customers that depend on us for the services that we provide. And when we got the PPP, it really eliminated a lot of my fears because my main concern is, how am I going to make payroll? How am I going to continue to pay for my advertising if I'm not allowed in my customer's house and I'm not able to do the things that I need to do to generate the income to continue to run the business? And so what the PPP allowed me to do was gave me the confidence to know, okay, I can still continue to spend my advertising budget. I can keep my people employed because my people are my biggest asset. I can keep my employees employed and working, whether or not we have calls coming in or not, because I know I can cover their payroll. And so what we did was we doubled down on our advertising. So we made sure that our customers knew that we were open and we were here to serve them. I worked all of my technicians in, and we worked on technical training. We worked on customer service training. We had our CSRs working. If we weren't answering the phones, we were outbounding to our customers to let them know we're here and we can serve you. And it really paid off for us. We were able to stay in business. When a time that I was worried with so much uncertainty, I didn't know what the future looked like for us even. We were able to grow and then in the last part of the year, even exceed our budget for June, July, August, and on after that, because of the confidence that I know that I got from having the PPP to know that I could cover my payroll for my employees.
Was there ever a hesitation that you guys wouldn't apply for it, or was it a
No,
no-brainer?
no, not for me personally, but no, there wasn't a hesitation.
Had to do it.
Yeah.
What was it? Was it a fairly easy process? I mean, once you guys got into it, and as you think about doing it again, are you going to do it again?
We're going to take a look at it. So the requirements are different for the second round than the first round. So you have to check really closely and work with your accountants to see that you qualify. But for the first round, it was pretty easy for us because we have a payroll service that we work with that automates all of our taxes and things like that. And so we were able to pull our necessary payroll reports. Our financials are kept up to date on a daily basis. And so it wasn't an issue for us gathering the financial information and the payroll reports, the tax information, things like that. But you do have to have good, solid bookkeeping to make that easy.
Yeah. Kevin, any questions from your perspective on, or anything else on the PPP side of it?
I just think one of the things that really struck me, because I think a lot of businesses, I think all businesses were really taking a large breath last April. Mm-hmm. And they were a lot of them were really forecasting some really dire budgets for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And I think what Emily really said really well was the fact that it allowed her then to just run the business. It gave them confidence to run the business. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I was surprised at, and you and I were talking about that earlier this morning, Matt, was how much money the SBA turned around and gave back to the Treasury, and because there wasn't anyone else to give it to. Mm. So the only thing I would like to say was, when it comes to the PPP2 that's operating right now, if you haven't applied for it, please get in touch with me or in touch with Matt. We can point you in the right direction, give you some information. We can point you to the website in the SBA. And it's just it's one, we really don't know how 21 is going to go. We think we do, we don't know. It's a great insurance policy. And so I would hope everyone would take advantage.
So, one of the things that, as you talk through that, I'm curious about it, I think we can kind of transition into what we really want to talk about today. In the world that I live in, consulting and development training, we began to get on a lot of these types of conversations, our calls, forums, whatever, seminars, whatever you want to call it. And we just were talking through, salespeople were faced, like your technicians, they were in unprecedented times in terms of going into homes. They were, we were looking at, what is our sales process going to look like now, right? People are going to call, are they going to let us into the homes? And I think, it's probably a mixed bag on what people said in terms of how it went. But the one thing that I really that I take away in what you said, and this is where I want to spend a lot of time today, because I'm just curious about how you guys arrived at the mindset that you're at. Because what I heard you say is we took control. We were not going to let this control us. Right now, the PPP obviously is something that allows us to take that control, and we're not forced into this to worry about payroll. You double down on advertising, and you said, hey, and I think that's an attitude, that's a belief system that said we're not going to let this control us. And as I went through last year, I just, it's my personality, but I'm kind of a run into the fire guy. I have a tendency to look at things as opportunities, not as a challenge, right? I mean, it is a challenge, and it's not that we want to be insensitive to it, but every time we go through something in business, I think it creates opportunities for us. It creates opportunities to look at things differently. How do we sell right now? Is there a place that we need to tweak our sales process? Are there things that we can do better and more efficiently with our technicians in the home? But I think that takes a mindset. There's a shift there. And I know you're a believer in sort of that control, and you mentioned, we've talked offline about coaching, and give us a sense of how you guys just over the last several years have really gotten to the place you're at today. And we'll talk about the how you do it, and want to get into some of the dials and the planning and budgeting and forecasting, but talk to us a little bit about just with with you and Chris, how you guys arrived at this place to say, we do need to take control of our business, and we need to start doing things from a proactive perspective versus a reactive perspective.
Yeah. So a couple of things. So specifically about earlier in the spring, how we reacted to when we decided to take control of the COVID situation. So Chris and I got together. That's my husband. We own Service Plus together. And we got together and we said, we have to figure out what our customers want more than they want to
Yes.
avoid people in their homes or things like this. So we had to find out where that tipping point was for our customers. So we adapted pretty quickly, and we thought, well, keeping people comfortable and in their homes is absolutely necessary, but maybe if we can provide a value added service for our customers, that we could, something that we can do that nobody else can, then maybe they'll want us to come in and take care of their heating and cooling system. So we started offering an indoor sanitization service for people's heating and cooling systems. And so we started offering this value service. It's normally, we charge about $129 is what the charge is for that normally. It's a service that we've always offered, but we started offering it at no charge for our customers. And so that really helped us maintain the work that we needed to do. And then we just stayed in really active communication with our customers and our employees. So we did daily Zooms where we talked about what we can do to keep our customers safe. We got masks really fast. We already had the gloves and the shoe covers, and we let our customers know what we were going to do to not spread the virus to them. So we did that. But bigger than that, we couldn't have gotten to this position in realizing our ability to take control if we hadn't had some outside help within our company for the last several years. And so we participate we have a coach, we have a business coach, and we have a coach for our service technicians. We have specific service methods and systems that we follow, and we didn't do it alone. So we relied on some peer-to-peer information and idea sharing, and we worked with our business coach.
So from that perspective, talk to me a little bit about, when you look at sort of the volatility of the market, and we're obviously in wintertime, and talk to me a little bit, because I know you're big on huddles, and you guys are focused on, sorry, and I look at this, and Kevin's going to laugh at me here, but I look at this like the cockpit of an airplane, right? There's a whole lot of instrumentation. When you run a business, there's a whole lot of things you look at. I mean, there's a lot of data I'm sure that you have available to you to run your business, but my guess is that there's just 4 or 5 key dials, right? When we talk about what are we really watching the next 90 days, what is it that you're looking at every single day? Give us a perspective of, from your, running. You talk about technicians on the service side, you talk about sales, whether it's preventative maintenance. Give me a sense of just, what are those 4 or 5 key dials that you're honed in on watching right now?
Okay, I love it. So we call them our key performance indicators, or our KPIs. And the most important one that you didn't even mention is our call center. Our
Okay.
call center has our big tool that we use is what we call our 3-day call board. And so we plan our capacity to run the calls for the number of technicians that we have, how many calls we want per day. We plan our days according to this 3-day call board. And so we don't just rely on waiting for the phone to ring to make sure we have enough calls for our technicians, because there's only so much you can control with advertising and marketing spend to get the phone to ring. And so if our 3-day call board isn't full, our CSRs start working to outbound to make sure that that is full. And then we use this as part of our global picture for like your 90-day forecasting, or we take it on a much smaller basis. So we look at 3 days, 5 days, 30 days. We have these different timeframes that we look at. And so we use our 3-day call board, and we combine that with some metrics that we track for all of our technicians. So we look for our average ticket according to the type of call that we're running. If it's an HVAC service call, if it's an HVAC maintenance call, or maybe we have plumbing too. So we have different KPIs for that. But we look at our average tickets. We look at our closing ratio. So if we run 10 calls, how many are we going to close? If we close 5, we have a 50% closing ratio. So we look at our average tickets, we look at our closing ratios, and we pair that with our 3-day call board to see, okay, what's the revenue we can expect to generate today based on math, based on historical trends, to know if we are going to win the day or not. So we set at the beginning of, but in 2020, we set a budget for 2021. And we break that big budget down to the smallest key performance indicators that we can, which is calls run and your average ticket per your call run. And we figure, okay, we want to grow 20%. So we say, okay, how many calls do we need to run to grow 20%? Okay, how many technicians do we need to hire in order to run that many calls? And then we project what our revenue will look like from that, because we know really well what our average tickets and our closing ratios are.
So you mentioned budget. You mentioned a bigger overall budget, and I think one of the things, and as we talk about a 90-day, we use this phrase a 90-day plan,
Yep.
and I think we feel like so where do we start? What do we do? And it I want to back up just one level higher. So it sounds like you guys actually, before you sit down and look at, and I love I love the 3 days, the 5 days, and that's awesome. I mean, I love the fact that we're getting that micro, and I want to come back to that in a little bit, but I mean, you start with a bigger envelope, right? I mean, do you guys sit down at some point in the fourth quarter and you plan out a 12, 18 month, 24-month budget? Give us a little bit of perspective where you start there.
Sure. So the most important budget that we have that we set is probably our yearly budget. Okay. But to guide that, Chris and I also have a 3-year plan and a 5-year plan that he and I kind of set the direction of where we want the company to grow. So we have a big picture in mind. But usually in September or October, we get together with our management team. We do like a 3 or 4 day retreat. We take the managers and we go to meet with our business coach, and we work on setting the budget for the following year. So each manager is responsible for setting the budget and the goals for their department. Because if they set their own goals, they've got that buy-in. They want to win, they want to get it. And so they set the goals for their departments for the entire year. And then they know how many technicians they need to hire. They know what their closing ratios and average tickets need to be on every call that they run, because you can't win the year if you don't win the month, and you can't win the month if you don't win the day. And so we just break it down to real small bite-sized pieces.
So Emily, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Kev.
So Emily, here's something that I love. I mean, it's an old expression: how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So that's really what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You're taking your annual budget and you're knocking it down to a quarter, to the month,
to
the day, and then you're taking the bite size so small. You're going to say, okay, what's the average ticket? I think that I don't want anyone to miss that.
Yeah.
That's critical.
Yeah.
And then you say, how many leads am I going to have to get this closure? Now, don't you have different closure rates, probably for different technicians?
We do. So we have a goal for the overall department, but departments are made up of 10 or 15 guys or 20 guys, depending on the size of your company. And departments are made up of each guy, and some guys are better at closing than others are. You know, some guys are more experienced, some guys are less experienced. So we know what we need to get for the whole department, but the managers, it's their responsibility to know their technicians and to break it down for each technician. So if technician A is really good at closing these calls, he's going to have a higher goal set for him than a different technician who's maybe newer to the industry.
Okay. And so does this I presume that this transcends the plumbing side, and you actually do a little bit on the sewers?
Absolutely. 100%.
And then as well as the
every
HVAC.
Department. Yep. Every department for our company.
Excellent. Yeah. I just wanted to, I really wanted to put a little emphasis there, because when you can break it down to the day, and then I hear you guys talk about, when I'm in there, winning the day.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about that too, Kev. So that's a real important part of the whole of putting it together, because if you can't win the day, you're not going to win the month. So we have our yearly budget that we break down into monthly goals. And for HVAC, it's really based on seasonality. We factor a lot of seasonality in on how we come to our monthly goals. And then we know how many technicians we have. We know how many calls we need to run. So every day at 8:50 in the morning, we get together with all of our department managers plus our dispatchers, and everybody reports on the numbers that we did yesterday,
Mhm.
and then we make a commitment for today. So for example, today we go in there and we will commit to we have 10 HVAC service technicians, for example. If
Okay.
we only have 7 working, we can only run so many calls. So we need to
Right.
go, why do we only have 7 working? Who messed up giving 3 guys off today? So we identify where the issues are, where we're not going to meet our goals, and we work immediately. We work today to solve the problem so that we actually do hit our goals. So we can see if we're falling behind the day that it happens. And everything is based on average tickets and closing ratios. Because if you look at math for a
Mhm.
long enough period of time, you really are able to see and predict the future by knowing
Correct.
these key performance indicators.
If you're running on the front end of the math, right?
Yeah.
I think that you
Yeah.
got, and I think that's a really important piece to this is that you're not waiting on the revenue to come in. You're looking at the activity. You're looking at what we call the leading data, because you know this morning if there's not enough calls on the board, the revenue is not going to come.
Yep.
So you react to the number of calls, not to the revenue that's coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How much time, Emily, do you think you and Chris and your management team spend planning and getting to these numbers? What would you say, just on average, in the course of a year or of a 90 days, do you guys really spend in just sitting down and planning out the business?
And planning the business. So we get our yearly plan in about a 4-day time frame. So we'll
Right.
take our managers out of the office. We'll go. Like this year, we went down to Nashville. It was fun. Everybody really looks forward to it. We have really good dinners, and we work really hard all day long with our business coach to set this reasonable plan that encompasses growth for the next year. Growth, marketing, recruiting. We come up with an entire plan for what our average tickets need to be, what our closing ratios are, where we may need to add in training for our guys, technical or customer service or otherwise. So we do that in like 4 days. We get the plan set up for the next year, but then we maintain that work every single day. There's not a day that goes by in our company that we miss our daily huddles. It is a non-negotiable. And so your excuse to miss the daily huddle is you're on vacation or you're dead. That's it. Even if you've got like something for your kids going on or whatever, you call in. We'll Zoom you in. Like, it's a non-negotiable for us.
So Emily, tell us. So you have that every day,
Yeah.
and when you first started it, I think it took a little bit longer than where you are today.
It was. We tried a lot of really clunky versions of it, and fortunately, you have to learn how to really hold people accountable for it, because it's okay to miss one day from your daily huddle, and it's okay to miss 2 days. But if you miss your goals 2 days in a row, if you don't win the day 2 days in a row, on the third day, it really requires the managers to work together, and somebody has to hold them accountable and say, you can't miss your goals again. You need to get out in the field. You need to work with your guys, whatever it is, to make this happen. Maybe
Right.
it's our call board's not full.
Mhm.
All the managers get on the phone, and we're all going to outbound and see what we can book. So we do power hours if that's where all the managers get on the phones and book calls for our customers. So we have
So
different things we do to act. You just have to act.
yeah, and I'm curious about that. I want to ask one more question before on just
Yeah.
the investing in the business. So, you guys obviously have numerous employees. You have a management team.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a voice in this audience that's like, well, when you have that many people, that's easy, right?
Mhm.
What would you tell, kind of take yourself back a little bit, what would you tell a solopreneur? What would you tell the contractor, the husband and wife
Oh,
that's sitting here going, but I'm the salesperson, or, I've got I'm the one that goes out on troubled calls, and I just can't take 4 days out of my business to go do this.
You don't have to take 4 days if you're just managing yourself anyway. So this is what it takes us to manage our organization and bigger, but we've been doing this for 18 years. And for a very long time, it was just me and Chris and maybe two or three or four other people. And so you always have to make the time to set the plan. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's just, it doesn't take that much time. There's no reason not to find the time to set an annual budget.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that because you can't, when you talk about winning the day and the leading behaviors, I mean, you set a destination, you set a 3-year destination, a 5-year destination, and everything spins back off of that. And I think when, I mean, can we sit down and get to some math and go, okay, well, let's start with a target of 350 on an average service ticket, or whatever it is. I think we can. I do think we don't want to. What's that?
Don't even set a goal first. So for the person who's just starting, maybe they have never had an annual plan, maybe they don't know where they are, don't even worry about setting a goal to begin with. Start by analyzing the data for what you do now. So for each person that runs their calls, figure out what their average ticket is, which is the total revenue per day divided by the total number of calls that they run. So if you collect $400 on 4 calls, you have an average ticket of $100. Figure that out and just keep track of it. Keep track of it write it down on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be sophisticated at all, but you have to know these, because that's how you say, okay, if I can run 2 more calls a day, or if I can run 3 more calls a day, what does my revenue look like then?
So let me translate that, because I do think you make a tremendously valid point, because we want to jump to the goal and to the number. And we know that we got to have some mechanisms in place first. And so what I hear you say is, let's build a cockpit in our business. Let's get some dials. Let's get let's put some structure around this, so that before we worry about where we want to go, we at least know where we're at. Right. I mean,
that's your baseline.
Yeah, I'm such a structure process guy. I think just when you look at a lot of the entrepreneurial side of the world, we just, and I think entrepreneurs we're gunslingers, right? I mean, just like, I know how to do this. I got it, but we're not right. We're not tracking. We don't have that structure to know. There's got to be a baseline somewhere to start in order for us. So I love that. I think just building the structure within the business. And knowing what those pieces are. Talk to me a little bit about. I think one of the fascinating things is when we get this data, the reaction to it, right? How do we? Because I think a lot of times we maybe we can react emotionally. We get volatile or whatever. So these when you talk about the calls and we start, you mentioned the 2 days. If we see 1 day of goals. What we don't necessarily just react to that. We watch it for another day. Give us kind of what are your tipping points? What are the things that make you go, oh, okay, wait a second, we got something going on here? And then talk to us a little bit about, you don't have to give us all your secrets, but what are some things that you guys just react to, and hey, here's maybe our top 2 or 3 go-to type things that we do to make sure that we get back on track.
Yeah. So for me, one of the biggest things that we have is our 3-day call board. It's really important to me to make sure that that our technicians have enough calls to run every day. So 1 day off on the call board is not something that we're going to freak out about, but today's gone. So I can't fill today's call board today, but I can spend today filling tomorrow's call board. And so we always want to make sure that our call board is full. And so if we're off 1 day, that's okay. If we're off the second day, maybe we'll get 2 more people outbounding on calls, rather than just having 1 person in the office. And if it's off on 3 days, I'm going to get on the phone. Chris will get on the phone. Everybody gets on there and we try to fill that up. If we're
So
looking,
can I ask you a question right there? And again, I don't want to go into your secrets, but
you're fine.
the people calling, do they have two or three things that they can offer, or are they just picking a list and saying, hey, Miss Cunningham, I'm reaching out to you from, Service Plus. We haven't been out there in a while. This cold season's coming up. We want to do it. What are they doing? What are they saying?
We have a lot of different things that we're offering, a lot of different things that we'll outbound on. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier of you've got to find something compelling enough to get your customers to say, yes, that is a valuable service. I want to do that. So one of the keys for us for growing our business is growing our membership program or our maintenance program for our customers. And so we'll outbound to those customers and say, oh, Mr. Jones, it's time for us to come out and do your heating and cooling system inspection. This is a service you've already paid for and you're part of our maintenance club and we can't wait to come out and help you with this. So we will outbound for that. We'll outbound for customers that maybe haven't done business with us in the last 12 months. We'll outbound on customers that if they have an estimate that they haven't accepted yet and it's within 2 or 3 days, we'll reach out to them and see if they'd like to schedule that work. So some of those things.
Yeah, what generally is the reception to that? Do once we start making the dials, are most people like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that, or do a lot of those, do we run into friction points with that, or?
It always does. So for any outbounds if you make 10 outbound calls, we know we've got a good campaign if you're booking 10% of those. So 1 out of 10 is a really solid. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good outbound campaign. We'll keep working these numbers. If we're not booking 1 out of 10, we'll work together as a team with our call center manager to come up with another offer that we may make. So for example, when we were doing the indoor coil sanitization for our customers in the spring and in the fall, they loved it. And we were booking 40% of those. So that was a
Wow.
fantastic outbound campaign for us. So, yep.
I think in order and you just have to sit down and do the work, right? I mean, we got
Yeah.
a question in here about the outbound. I think we kind of answered that, but if you have questions out there, I remiss to say, make sure you're asking in the Q&A. If there's something you want to ask Emily, we'll pass it along through the Q&A. So make sure we've got about 20 minutes here left. And so if there's things you want to ask her, there's things you want to know, she's an open book, and obviously you can tell it's her passion and she loves talking about it. So it gives me a lot of excitement as well. I could probably do this for 3 hours. But here's the thing that I'm really intrigued by, and I'm going to ask you a really tough question.
Okay.
Because I think one of the things that really has to be in place when you talk about your management team, and I know it's different for the solopreneurs and the smaller shops, but the one thing that I really hear in what you're talking about more so than just the planning is culture.
Yeah.
It's the culture of, this is how we're going to do it, right? It's the culture that you don't miss a meeting. It's the culture of buy-in, that everybody says, hey, look, when there's not enough calls on the board for the technicians, you mentioned Chris, if he has to get on the phone, right? It's that culture of accountability.
Yeah.
How did you guys create that? How did you guys because I think, I don't want to minimize that the process piece of this is easy. I mean, you mentioned business coaches, I do it for a living. Kevin's done it all. I mean, getting that, it just takes time to sit down and there's a ton of resources out there, but I think it's the culture. It's the buy-in. It's the fact that this is the way we are going to do business.
Yeah.
How did you guys get there?
It's not easy. I will tell you that it's not easy. And it's not something that happens overnight. I'll be honest with you. We've had times in the evolution of our business where our culture was terrible. It was really, it was in the toilet. I think that for me, for solidifying the people, my relationship. So I'm the general manager for our company, and the people that report directly to me are our department managers. So HVAC service, HVAC install, plumbing, and then we've got a sales manager, and call center, and then finance manager. And for me, the biggest thing to building culture with these managers was getting to know them. They have to get to know them and get to know what my motivations are, what my big goals are. So I have to communicate I have to sell them on the big picture for where we're going to be in 3 years and where we're going to be in 5 years. but we have weekly one-on-ones. So it's about an hour that I sit down with each of the managers and we talk about what's going on in their department. We always start off with talking about what's going on with our lives personally. And I know what their kids are doing and, you know, what little league sports they're in. And I ask how they did on the game. And it's just important to have that relationship with each other. And then I ask them, then we talk about the meat of what's going on in their department. Who did they work with? What did they struggle with? What did they do well? I ask them to rank themselves and then I rank them too. And we have to compare it. And this was really hard at the beginning because it was uncomfortable and they thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get in trouble every week. And it just takes time to put that in to realize, no, this is just for us to keep rowing in the same direction.
So Emily,
Yeah.
would you be describing the EOS process a little bit?
Probably, yes. Yes, we do follow the EOS process.
And how long have you had that in your company?
We've known about EOS for probably 5 years, but we've only really been practicing true to the letter for maybe 18 months.
So you would say you're starting to get traction, which is
Absolutely.
again part of EOS.
But
In the last
down. Yeah. So then I ask all of our managers to have these same types of one-on-ones with each of their team members. So everybody gets a one-on-one with their supervisor every week to go over what they're struggling for, to keep everybody mind and eye on the big picture and know where we're going. And the thing is, our guys, for me, in my company anyway, my guys are in this industry because they love to help people. They want to serve people. They want to fix things and they get really excited about that. They don't want to be driven and motivated by numbers and revenue, and that doesn't impact them at all. But when you tie it to the importance of, hey, this customer had an issue and we know we can solve 85% of the customers that call us in with broken down equipment. We need to be solving that because that's a better service for our customer. It's less inconvenience for them. Then they're like, oh, okay, I see why you're tracking my closing ratios now.
So Emily, I think there's probably people listening to this conversation, and you're talking about your department head of install, service, plumbing, HVAC, finance, so forth and so on. So you seem a lot larger, and so therefore I think they might turn around and say, well, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Or that you're in a different league than I am. So I've known you and Chris for, I don't know, 10, 11 years or so.
Long time.
Or maybe a little longer.
Emily, I apologize for that, by the way. I'm sorry that.
Thanks, Matt. Just very quickly talk about, how you started and where it started. Because I think it is an evolution, and it's an evolution they can make as well.
Yeah. So like Kev said, Chris and I have been doing this for 18 years. And when it was just us, we took our business as far as being nice and common sense could take us. So we did it for probably close to 10 years on our own without having any sort of business coach. And we were floundering at that point in time where we were working harder than we'd ever worked and we were making less money than we ever had. We're like, what is going on? So we did hire on a business coach. We got a business coach who helped us learn how to track these key performance indicators, who helped us learn how to set our budgets and our plans and the importance of a call board. And then you just start tracking wherever you find yourself. So if you are the service manager, if you're the owner and you're the service manager, it's your job to make the time to meet with all of your technicians. It's your job to make sure that they know what your plan is and where you want to go. If you are, you don't have to have this big organization to put these in. So put these in place. And there are sizes where it gets really difficult to manage everything if you do just have one owner or one manager. But
so wasn't Chris at one time the service manager and sometimes maybe the salesperson?
Yep.
Much like a lot of the people that might be listening on this call.
Chris is our sales manager right now. He's my husband and he's our sales manager. And like, it's a little uncomfortable when I have to be like, listen, you didn't get your sales goals 2 days in a row. You can get your head
Now,
out of your butt and do something. Like, I've done this.
now, I'd like to draw to everybody's attention that we did have Chris, her husband, on earlier, and it's much more the sales side of it and a lot of the history of it. And behind every guy, every man, there's a very strong woman, and that is absolutely positively Emily. In terms of you do manage the EOS process. You do hold people accountable.
Yeah. And it's not fun. It's not easy to begin with, but once you've been doing it, you push through that discomfort of following the EOS, of holding people accountable, and then they become to expect it, and it gives everybody a sense of security then that I didn't expect to be a result of this. I really did not. I thought we'd get some results, but I didn't know how good it would feel to be a part of a really secure company where my plumbing manager knows that my HVAC manager is going to get his goals and he's going to do everything he needs to do. So he feels real comfortable about what he's doing in his department.
Well, I think that's the one sort of misemphasized or underemphasized area of whether it's EOS traction, what you're doing, and it's the part that nobody likes to talk about, but I think it's the most important because it's really easy to want to talk about KPIs and the daily behaviors and how do we add 3 calls, because that's all the stuff that's sexy, right? It's all the stuff that's like, these are the immediate needle movers. And I think, as a solopreneur, to your point, I mean, we can sit down with a notepad and we can just start going through that.
Mhm.
But here's the part that I think that any business owner out there that's on this call has to take the message away of what you said, because the first place that EOS starts, the first place that I start with a company that I work with, is what are your core values?
Mhm.
You mentioned the things that drive us, the things that motivate us, because nobody's motivated by a sell. Nobody's motivated by revenue. That's not what those are the what things that we do, right? But it's not the why we do it. And when you talk about company culture, and I think you said it best, you have to get out of your comfort zone. It's going to make you, and I think a lot of people stop. We want to go just into the 90-day plan because that's like, no, just give me, it's right now, right? It's that, but it's really, it's starting way back up here to go, why am I really doing this? And getting that part of on paper, because that's what's going to push you out of that comfort zone. That's what's going to, but that's also what people subscribe to. And your passion just comes through the video. I think about it because my guess is that you guys are motivated and driven by those core values that you've identified through, and your managers buy into that.
We have 5 core values, and they're so important with us that we have them in huge letters that takes up an entire wall of our training center where we have like all of our meetings. So it's just a very public place in our business. So we have our core values on there. And when we hire someone, we spend half a day on their first day talking about our company ethics and our core values. And we make no mistake that people know when they get hired on that we hire and we fire based on these core values. That's how important they are to us. And it was really difficult making sure that we really nailed those core values down. But the time that we spent on that was well worth it, well worth the investment of time to figure that out, because it does become kind of a rallying cry for our guys. And then they understand how we make decisions because we relate it back to core values all the time. So if we say, hey, you did a great job on this, you really exemplified a positive can-do attitude, which is our first core value, by you had this tough customer and you put a smile on your face and you came in here and you were awesome to your team. Like, that's a positive can-do attitude. So we tie praise back to the core values. We tie corrective action back to the core values too. So it's very important.
I would love to have you back on for another hour and just talk about hiring. Because I think when you talk about culture and obviously labor is what it is in these days, but just it's, you hire on core values, you fire on core values. I mean, that for a lot of us, we're just like, give me a warm body. And then it just doesn't translate to culture. But I mean,
for a very long time, time, we were within that mindset. Absolutely. It's an easy trap to fall into.
Yeah.
And why do you think that people fall into that trap, Emily?
Oh, because you work so hard to generate these calls and fill your call board, and you spend all this money on advertising, and then, oh my gosh, I can't run them. You've got to be kidding me. I worked so hard to get this call. I gotta have people to run them. but you can't just have anybody. You got to have the right body, you know?
Yep. Emily, one last question, and I just put a slide up here just to give people an idea that are sitting here just listening to this and asking themselves the question, where do I start? And I think it goes to a lot of what we talked about. Just write something down, right? I mean, it can be anything. Get on an Outlook calendar. I mean, there's no right or way wrong to do it. Just start, I think, and then obviously a couple of points on data. As we wrap up, and I'll just leave that up for a visual for a second. I do have one question or two questions that I want to ask you. Give me your greatest lesson, or Chris's. It could be company management, whatever. It doesn't have to be just yours specifically. But I'm curious, what's the greatest lesson that you learned over the last 12 months? And as you think about going into 2021, and Matt Wisniewski is on this call. He's the VP here at Larson, and he made a comment yesterday. We're not going to talk about 2020 anymore, and I love that. Right. What's the greatest lesson you learned in the last 12 months? If I can put you on the spot.
Sure. That does put me on the spot a little bit. But the greatest lesson that I learned from 2020 is kind of what I talked to. Like, you can't let fear dominate your operations for your business. And even without PPP, even without, SBA stepping in to help in, or these programs, you can control things. You do have control that you can maintain in your business. And so really focus on communicating with your customers, communicating with your staff, and check your mindset. Because when I was fearful, our business absolutely contracted when I was fearful. And then when I decided I wasn't going to let fear govern me anymore, I wasn't going to be paralyzed by it anymore, and I started taking action by filling my call board, by finding a compelling offer that was more important to my customers than keeping people out of their homes, by maintaining proactive communication with my technicians, by saying, you're doing a good job, the work you do matters, we are serving our communities, and this is what we're here to do. It really made a big difference for us. So just try not to let the fear get the best of you.
I love that. And then one last question. What's one thing that you've changed? What's one thing that you guys are doing differently now that has come via the pandemic, or has come, based on the way you're having to go in homes? What's something that you're doing different?
Okay, yeah. So this is a real boots on the ground thing too. So we have sanitizers, and our guys, and we let our customers know this when we're booking the call. Our guys, it's a non-negotiable. You wear your mask every call. It doesn't matter if your customer says you don't have to wear it. We wear our masks at every call. We don't shake hands, and we let our customers know we're going to wave at you or give you a thumbs up or an air high five, but we're not going to shake your hand anymore. And then we sanitize the inside of our vehicles and all of our tools after every single service call. So the insides of our vehicles are sanitized at a minimum of 3 times a day. The guys wipe off their tool handles at least a minimum of 3 times a day. And then we communicate that to our customers so that they know we take this seriously. We're taking action. We're keeping you safe, and we're keeping ourselves safe as well.
Awesome. I love it. Over communicate. Anything that we should have asked you that we didn't?
No, this is great.
Well, we are extremely grateful that you came on with us, and I absolutely had a blast. I could do it. I would love to talk more with you. But I would really be intrigued by the hiring part. I think that would be just a hugely valuable conversation in terms of how you guys go about doing that. I know that's a real priority for a lot of people.
Sure.
So
thank you for having me. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very much appreciate you coming on. Kevin, any last words? We've got about 6 minutes here. Matt, I don't know if you're on, if you want to chime in before we roll out here, but we'll take just a second and wrap it up.
I would, Matt, you want to say something?
Sure, I'll say something first. I just want to thank Emily for coming on. I haven't seen her since we were. It was over a year ago, and we were someplace. I believe it was much warmer.
It was.
Those were the days.
Those were the days, and they'll be back. They'll be back, Emily. That I promise you.
Yeah.
And I just want to. I've learned a lot today just from hearing it directly from you. Matt mentioned that yesterday we kind of had an engagement with a lot of our employees, and And one of the things I talked about is the first rule of 2021 is don't talk about 2020. I did have a precursor to that, though, which I'm glad. I loved the dialogue there that you guys had about, well, just because last year was a strange year, and obviously a lot of that strangeness has continued into 2021. There was a lot of really good things that came out of last year, and the focus that you've put on these leading indicators in your business, and how you've really kind of institutionalized that into your culture is just really impressive. And I can't thank you enough for sharing that with us today, and allowing us to continue to learn as well. So thank you so much, Emily. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm glad to help.
Yep. Well, for those of you that are out there, thanks for joining us today. I hope there's a lot of value. We're just beyond willing to help. You heard Emily say one of the biggest places that they had to arrive at was it's okay to ask for help, and whether it's through PPP, whether it's through a business coach, somebody at Larson, somebody outside of Larson, whatever it is, it's okay to ask for help. Every great business person has a coach. I shared with these guys before we came online. Steve Jobs ran one of the best companies in the world, and the week that he passed away, on the Monday prior, he was with his business coach in his private jet, having a conversation about how to better the business. It's just every great athlete, it's so, it's okay to ask for help. And I think the second big thing is it's a process. It's not a one and done. It's an involvement. It starts with core values. Look for, within the Larson rings can help you with EOS if that's what you decide. There's a lot of stuff out there, but I think it's just the idea of it takes time, and it's gonna stretch you. It's gonna get you out of your comfort zone, but just spend the time. And I think, as what Emily and Chris has gone through, whatever that looks like in the vision, maybe it's not the type of a company that they have, but that's okay. But as you go through that exercise, you very quickly begin to see the vision that you want for you and your business and your family. I think it's just taking the time to do that, and the rest of it will evolve for you. So that's all I have. Again, thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I just want to share one more thing. I'm reading this book right now. It's a pretty good book. It's called The Wisdom of Walk-Ons. It's a real easy read with lots of pictures. So big print. It's a book that I can really sink my teeth into. But there's just this real simple line that one of the walk-ons states, and it's really just, you'll never know unless you try. And I think that's kind of the message. If you guys didn't try all the things that you're trying, it would have never become part of your daily practice. And you have to take some risks, and like Matt just said, ask for help. I'm certainly probably going to follow up with Emily on some of the things I got from her today on outbound calling. So if you need any help from us, those who are attending, please don't, feel free to reach out to your Larson representative, because we'd love to engage in this discussion with you and try some things. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right, guys, take care. Thanks again, Emily. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.